My wife cheated on me, but not with a neighbor, a best friend, or some random guy from the gym. No, this isn't your average affair. It's a little more twisted than that. She slept with my stepdad. Yeah, let that sink in. I loved my mom more than anything. She was my rock, my support, my everything, until she passed away 3 years ago. Her death left a hole in me that I honestly thought my wife, Melissa, might help fill. Now, I'll admit, my mom had her flaws. One of them was that she never really gave her husband, Richard, the appreciation he maybe deserved. Richard was my stepfather, and they'd been married for about 10 years. Truth be told, he wasn't a bad guy. He taught me how to drive, helped me figure out taxes, and tried to be a decent father figure. I'm starting with the good stuff because what comes next, it's rough. After Mom died, Melissa started acting a little off. I spent a lot of time reminiscing, missing Mom, and yeah, I guess I was pretty down for a while. Melissa said there were whole days where I just seemed distant and depressed. Can you blame me? Losing someone like that isn't something you just bounce back from. And this is where Richard suddenly becomes relevant. One night, Melissa was soaking in the bath when her phone buzzed with a work message. Nothing unusual. I'd answered her texts before when she couldn't get to them. So I picked it up, responded to her colleague, and even called out to her to let her know I'd handled it. But then another message popped up. It was from someone named Rick. Now here's the thing, Millie is a nickname I gave Melissa when we first started dating. I'm the only one who's ever called her that. So when this Rick opened with, "Hey Millie," my stomach dropped. That, and the fact that there was no last name in the contact, threw up a huge red flag. I hesitated, then opened the message. What I found made my blood run cold. It was a late-night message from Rick, apologizing for texting so late, and saying he couldn't stop thinking about her. My hands started shaking. I scrolled through their thread. There were deleted messages, and even a one-time view message that had already been opened. I didn't need more proof. Melissa was having an affair. And based on everything I'd just read, I already had a pretty sickening suspicion about who Rick really was. Richard. My stepdad. I needed confirmation. So I came up with a plan. I messaged Rick, telling him to meet me the next day in a specific part of town. I told him to wear a green shirt and sit at a certain table in a coffee shop. He was confused but agreed. I deleted our conversation afterward, just in case. The next day, I showed up early and scanned the place. I saw him right away. Green shirt. Sitting at the exact table I mentioned. It was Richard. He looked nervous, sweaty even, but when I casually asked him what he was doing there, he just said he was waiting for someone and quickly made up an excuse to leave. He seemed rattled, like he suspected something but didn't want to face it. I swear, I don't know how I stopped myself from punching him right then and there. But I kept my cool. Later that night, I confronted Melissa. Asked her directly about her relationship with Richard. Her reaction? Defensive. Confused. She played dumb, claiming she had no idea what I was talking about. So I tried a different angle. I told her I'd been getting the sense that Richard was seeing someone new. I said I was okay with it. He deserved to move on, but I was just hurt that he hadn't told me. We'd always been close. She shrugged it off, saying it was his private life and that maybe he was embarrassed to talk about it. That I should just leave it alone. But I couldn't. I pushed a little harder, said the reason I brought it up was because I thought maybe she could talk to him about it. She just sighed. Brushed it off. And in that moment I felt it, this deep, quiet heartbreak. Like I was surrounded by lies, and the person I loved most was feeding them to me with a straight face. That's when I knew, if I was going to do something bold, I needed hard proof. Not suspicions. Not gut feelings. Real evidence. Because I wasn't about to let myself be played for a fool. Not again. After that night, I knew I needed a real plan, one that would give me solid evidence. I started focusing on the phones, looking for any proof I could find. Unfortunately, my plan worked a little too well. Digging through some deleted and hidden messages, I finally uncovered the awful truth. Melissa and Richard, my wife and my stepdad, were having a full-blown affair. Right under my nose. Life has a cruel way of circling back, and now it was my turn to feel the sting. I took screenshots of every damning message. My heart felt like it had been yanked out of my chest, but I kept going, knowing I needed to confront them both face to face. So I set up a small dinner for the three of us. Nothing fancy, just enough to get them both in one place so I could finally expose the betrayal for what it was. I wanted to look them in the eyes when I dropped the truth on them. The dinner was tense. Way too quiet. Melissa and Richard barely said a word, like they sensed I knew more than I was letting on. After dessert, I leaned back in my chair and calmly said, "Well, I think it's time we talked. Let's address the big ol' elephant in the room." Their reactions were immediate and pathetic. Melissa played dumb, pretending to be confused, while Richard looked like a kid caught stealing cookies, eyes cast down, lips pressed tight. I asked them straight out for an explanation, but they kept dancing around it. Avoiding. Dodging. Denying. It wasn't until I laid out the printed screenshots on the table, hard, undeniable proof, that they finally caved. Here's what they had to say. Richard started first, voice soft and full of forced remorse. He apologized. Claimed he never meant to hurt me. Said people sometimes fall into dark places and do stupid, shameful things. He insisted he wasn't making excuses, just trying to explain how even good people can do horrible things. Then he brought up my mother. That's when I snapped. I cut him off, the mention of Mom lighting a fuse I could barely control. My fists clenched. I was this close to losing it. Melissa jumped in to smooth things over, but her words only made it worse. Her tone was sharp, defensive, like she was the victim. She started ranting about how our marriage had been in trouble, how Richard had been there to help her through it. At first, he just gave her advice, then it became more. My stomach turned. They tried to make it sound like some emotional mistake, like they'd somehow stumbled into it and meant no harm. That they'd try to make it right. As if anything could make this right. I lost it. I started yelling. Loud enough for the neighbors to hear. The whole block went silent after that, like the entire street had stopped to listen. If we hadn't cleared the table of knives before sitting down, I honestly don't know what would have happened. I was that furious. Eventually, through all the shouting and crying, we came to an agreement. Everyone would leave the house, separately. That night, I stayed home alone. I don't know where Melissa went, but I couldn't help picturing her with Richard. That thought alone made me sick. Though deep down, I didn't think she'd actually stay with him, not that night, anyway. But this marked the beginning of a dark chapter for me. My mental state spiraled fast. I couldn't focus at work, and my job started slipping through my fingers. And in a town like ours, small, gossipy, where everyone knows your business, rumors spread like wildfire. The whispers about Melissa cheating were everywhere. And once people figured out who she'd been with, the shame hit me like a freight train. Everyone knew my mom. Everyone knew Richard. It was humiliating. Melissa called me twice, not to apologize, just to talk. I hung up both times. After that, she stopped trying. Richard, on the other hand, came over out of the blue. He had the nerve to knock on my door and asked me to forgive her. Said she was young and easily influenced. Tried to put all the blame on himself. I wasn't having it. I told him exactly what I thought of him, that he didn't just betray me, he disrespected the memory of my mother. I said he belonged in the same place as Melissa, down in the gutter, where liars and backstabbers belong. He started crying. I didn't care. All I could think about was how long they'd been sneaking around, pretending nothing was happening, smiling in my face while stabbing me in the back. It was eating me alive. I needed to talk to someone. So I reached out to an old friend, Lola. She's the one who originally introduced Melissa and me. When I told her what happened, she was furious. Even apologized for ever bringing Melissa into my life. She said she hadn't spoken to her since everything came out and had no plans to. Then she asked me something unexpected, whether Melissa and I had a prenup. We didn't. And yeah, that was dumb. Especially considering it was Melissa who had suggested we sign one before we got married. Back then, I told her it wasn't necessary. That we trusted each other. God, I was such a fool. After everything blew up, I started wondering whether Melissa would show even the slightest bit of remorse. Would she be willing to let me have everything in a divorce? Or was she already scheming her next move? My thoughts kept circling back to the house we lived in. It technically belonged to Melissa's family, passed down from her aunt, and they had let us stay there indefinitely. I started to worry she might remember that little detail and use it to kick me out. And honestly, after what she did, I wouldn't put it past her to throw me out on the street like yesterday's trash. Maybe those missed calls she made, maybe they weren't apologies. Maybe she was just gearing up to give me the boot. At some point, I realized that parts of my life weren't just broken, they were stuck. I had to move forward, or upward, or somewhere that wasn't here. For me, that place turned out to be Colombia. Yeah, Colombia. It's been a few months since I got here. But before I get into that experience, let me explain why I made such a wild move. After the disaster with Melissa and Richard, I hit rock bottom. I mean the lowest I've ever felt in my life. Less than a year ago, I was stuck in this deep, paralyzing depression. There were moments when, honestly, I didn't know if I'd make it. Dark thoughts crept in, the kind I don't even like saying out loud. But thanks to a couple of incredible friends and a no-nonsense psychologist, I found a way through the worst of it. In one of our sessions, I admitted I still hadn't really grieved my mom's death. Not fully. And we talked about change, radical change, as the only way to shake myself out of the spiral. The more I thought about it, the more I knew I couldn't stay in that town. It was a good place, sure, but small. Too small. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone had seen me unravel. So I moved. I spent a couple of months in a nearby city, working a new job that helped me meet the right kind of people who helped me find a lifeline. One coworker told me about this international work exchange website. At first, I didn't really get it. But the more I researched, the more I realized it was exactly what I needed. A fresh start. The site connected people with jobs all over the world, places where you could work, live, and completely immerse yourself in a new culture. Russia, Brazil, Romania, Egypt, Australia. I considered them all. But I kept circling back to Colombia. My mom used to talk about it all the time. She'd spent a year there in her youth, and she always called it one of the most beautiful experiences of her life. Our neighbors to the south, she'd say with a smile. Her voice was still in my head, nudging me towards something better. So I went for it. I still had my remote job from the new city, something flexible that let me work from anywhere as long as I had my laptop and a stable internet connection. I sold off a bunch of stuff, honestly, pretty much everything that reminded me of my old life. The wedding gifts. The furniture. Photos. I got rid of all of it. Melissa and Richard kept calling and texting, but I ignored every attempt to reach me. Maybe ghosting isn't the most mature way to handle things, but I swear, it kept me sane. Eventually, the messages stopped. Once in a while, I'd see a missed call pop up, but that was it. They never showed up in person, thank God. And so I left. Leaving my job was tough. But moving to a whole new country, a whole new language, a whole new everything, it gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. And here's the thing, thanks to my mom, and a few brutal years of high school Spanish, I wasn't starting from scratch. I had the basics down. Within a few months, I could hold my own at the grocery store, ask for directions, and navigate day-to-day life. I landed a job as an assistant at a local law firm, answering calls, forwarding cases. The beginning was rough, especially with the language barrier. But with help from my coworkers and picking up the rhythms of daily conversations, I got better fast. Bit by bit, life started to feel livable again. While I was busy building a new life in Colombia, the past still had its way of creeping back in. No matter how far I thought I'd moved on from Melissa and Richard, their shadows still lingered. It started with an old friend reaching out. Apparently, Melissa had been stirring up drama again, this time telling anyone who'd listen that I abandoned her penniless and ran off to live the high life overseas. According to her, I left her with nothing, while I'm supposedly lounging in luxury somewhere abroad. Which is wild because, legally, we're still married. We never finalized the divorce. So technically, yes, we're still connected on paper. But Melissa acts like I ghosted her out of nowhere, framing herself as this poor, helpless victim. She's been calling me again, but I've ignored every attempt to get through. She paints this picture of herself as destitute and spiritually renewed, supposedly finding solace in some radical religious transformation. From what I hear, she's now evangelical, or something like it, and spends her time judging everyone around her like she's suddenly reached sainthood. You know the type. The ones who think repentance wipes the slate clean, who act like their past betrayals don't count anymore as long as they say, "I'm sorry," to the sky. She's even turned the tables, claiming I insulted her, that I mistreated her, that I caused her pain. And I just can't. According to my friends back home, she's telling people I verbally abused her, attacked her over personal things. Thankfully, those friends have been speaking up, correcting the narrative and letting others know the truth, that Melissa is fabricating lies to make herself look like the victim in a story where she was the villain all along. What infuriates me most, though, is how Richard's name never comes up in her sob stories. He's completely absent from every version of events she tells. And honestly, that only made me more curious. I hadn't heard from Richard in years. I blocked him after everything went down, and since he wasn't big on social media, I assumed he'd dropped off the radar completely. But lately I noticed something strange. His profile hadn't been updated at all. I wondered if maybe he'd blocked me, but it turned out others were asking the same question. No one knew what had happened to him. And then came the update I never expected. Richard had died. It's been 3 years since the affair came to light. Just yesterday, I had been writing about all of it, revisiting those memories, trying to make sense of the wreckage. And then today, out of nowhere, a friend tells me Richard was found dead in Greece. Apparently he'd moved there a while back, started some kind of solo journey, took to the sea, tried living a quieter, more contemplative life. Almost like he was walking a path similar to mine. I won't pretend I feel nothing about it. But I also won't pretend I feel sadness either. What I do feel is a weird, quiet amusement. Ironic, really. After all the damage he caused, he still ended up completely alone. Rumors say that even Melissa didn't stick around. She cut him off too, leaving him in the dust like he never mattered. And now? People are starting to whisper that Melissa might be cursed, that every man she's ever been involved with ends up exiled or emotionally wrecked. It's almost funny if you step back and look at it like a story. A twisted fairy tale where the princess poisons every prince she touches. But that's not really the point. Richard's gone. His funeral is tomorrow. Some of his relatives reached out and asked if I'd attend. They're kind people, they mean well, but I think they still don't understand why I might say no. They don't see that, for me, this isn't about closure. It's not about forgiveness. Yeah, Richard had his good moments. But he also betrayed me in the worst way possible. And while death might bring an end to his story, it doesn't magically resolve everything he did. I've talked about this in therapy, about how anger and revenge can rot you from the inside. I've worked hard to get to a place where I'm no longer carrying that hatred. It's heavy. It ruins you if you let it. I don't hate them anymore. Not actively. I've just let them go. That said, Melissa still throws dirt on my name. And yeah, that gets under my skin sometimes. But I keep reminding myself, every story eventually ends the way it's supposed to. And hers? Well, she's still living it. Still spinning her web. Still trying to play the hero in a story where she was always the villain. As for Richard, he's gone. And no matter what he did, he's part of my past now. Not my future. I offered my condolences to Richard's family and wished them peace moving forward. They returned the gesture, apologizing even though they weren't the ones who'd hurt me in the first place. Still, it meant something. It brought a small, quiet sense of closure. Now that life's calmed down a bit, I finally have the time and emotional bandwidth to sit down and tell the rest of the story. Let's start with why I went quiet for so long. My lawyer strongly advised me not to talk about anything publicly until after the trial was over. But the verdict's been delivered now, and I'm free to speak. And to be honest? To hell with Melissa. She's the most manipulative, self-centered, toxic person I've ever met. She managed the impossible. She made me wish her the worst, and still feel like I was being too generous. Every relationship ends somehow. Some with a whisper, some with a scream. Ours? It ended with her becoming my biggest enemy. And after the trial? Let's just say the truth finally had its day in court. So here's what happened. After Richard passed, it came to light that almost everything he owned was left to Melissa. According to a will he made years ago, way back when he was playing sugar daddy behind my back, she was his primary beneficiary. During our marriage, Richard had this creepy obsession with being involved in Melissa's life. He'd tag along on errands, give her lavish gifts, always with the excuse of being a supportive father-in-law. But in reality, he was grooming her the entire time. And like some twisted love letter, his will left her everything. Everything. It wasn't just a car or two, we're talking multiple properties, an apartment, a farm out of state. It was enough to make anyone sick, knowing what she'd done to earn it. But here's where karma stepped in. One of Richard's nephews, someone who never liked Melissa, told me all about the inheritance. He also told me Richard had regretted writing her into the will but had never gotten around to changing it while he was off hiding in Greece. At first, I was furious. All that should have been mine. Not because I felt entitled, but because she didn't deserve a damn cent of it. But then, something interesting came up. Since Melissa and I never finalized our divorce, technically, I was still her husband. Which meant, legally, I could claim half of everything she inherited. Joint property rights by marriage. So I called my lawyer. I won't say his name, but the guy is brilliant. One of those cold, calculating legal sharks with a near-perfect record in divorce and marital disputes. And I went for it. Filed for a property settlement as part of our marriage. Melissa, believe it or not, tried to hire the same lawyer. Turns out she couldn't afford him. He's expensive, no doubt, but I knew it was worth every penny. That's when I learned she joined her new religion for convenience. Financial hardship had her spiraling. She was trying desperately to hold on to everything Richard left her, clinging to the will like it was her golden ticket. But we had something powerful on our side, infidelity. Even without a prenup, her violation of the marriage agreement gave us grounds for an equitable division of assets. And that's exactly what we went after. You should have seen her face when the verdict came down. Red as a tomato. Her hands were shaking. She looked like she finally understood the consequences of everything she'd done. Within weeks, she lost it all. Everything Richard had left her? Gone. Wasted. Mishandled. My lawyer couldn't believe how badly she botched her shot at financial stability. And honestly, I feel like I dodged a bullet. She tried to argue her case, tried to paint me as the villain, but it didn't work. Not this time. We also finalized the divorce right after the split. That meant she could no longer go after my assets, and I didn't owe her a thing moving forward. My time in Colombia was great. But coming back with a full wallet and peace of mind? Even better. These days, nobody talks to Melissa. Even her church friends keep their distance, only speaking to her out of politeness. As for me? I've got something way better than revenge, peace. And the sweet satisfaction that karma really does exist. All I ever wanted was to give my family the best future possible. When our son Max was born, I was just starting the final year of my college degree. It was a brutal schedule, but I pushed through it, for them. I worked as a stocker at a grocery store from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., then headed straight to my full-time job at the police department from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. On Tuesdays, I had night classes from 5:30 to 10, and Saturdays were filled with school from 8 to 2. It was non-stop. But I was committed. I was determined to finish what I started. Lila, my wife, worked as a nurse's aide at the local hospital from 8 to 3. Thankfully, my mom lived just 10 minutes away, and she helped care for Max while we worked and studied. It was hard, no doubt about that, but we stuck together through it all. Or at least, that's what I thought. This past weekend, things between Lila and me exploded. We had one of our worst fights yet. She was upset that I wouldn't take a break from school to spend more time with her and Max. She said I was always working, always studying, and honestly, I couldn't deny it. But I was doing it for us. For our future. Still, her constant jabs, the way she dismissed all my effort, started to wear me down. We hadn't been intimate in over 2 months, and the distance between us was growing by the day. Then Monday night happened. I was fact-checking a research paper for one of my classes, and she just wouldn't stop picking at me. I snapped. I told her to quit acting like a child and let me work. And that's when she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I hate you. I'm in love with someone else." The world fell out from under me. We argued for hours after that. Eventually, she confessed. She'd been seeing someone else emotionally, a janitor at the hospital where she worked. It started with compliments, then lunches, and before long, she was trashing me to this guy and even kissing him behind my back. I couldn't believe it. The woman I had built my whole world around just tore it all down. So I walked out. Packed my suitcase, wheeled it through the living room, and didn't say a word. She followed, throwing out digs like, "Running back to mommy?" I ignored her. Put my suitcase on the driveway, walked back in, grabbed her purse, and handed it to her. She refused to leave. So I picked her up, gently but firmly, threw her over my shoulder, walked her outside, and set her down on the hood of her car. She was too stunned to fight back. I locked the door behind me and held the deadbolt in place while she pounded and yelled. Eventually, she gave up and went to her parents' place. Later, I found out she told them we'd separated, but left out the part about the affair. That night I didn't sleep. I called both of my jobs and said I had a family emergency. I needed the day. And then I passed out from sheer exhaustion. I woke up at 7 the next morning, already thinking about how to limit my contact with Lila moving forward. Things were spiraling, and I knew I had to take control before it got even uglier. I called my mom and asked if she could take Max for the day. She sounded concerned, asking why he wasn't already with me. I didn't go into detail, just dropped him off and headed straight to the office of an old family friend, Mr. Douglas. He's a lawyer, and I've trusted him since I was a kid. He went to school with my dad, so I knew I'd be in good hands. I laid it all out, everything that happened, and told him I wanted to file for divorce immediately. He listened carefully, then told me to think it over for a bit. But I was done thinking. I told him I wanted the papers drawn up that day. He agreed and promised to have them ready by the end of the day so I could file them myself. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. Taking control of my life felt good, even if the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. I went to work, came home, took a quick shower, and had breakfast with Max and my sister. Later that day, Lila called. She wanted to take Max for the weekend. But her tone? Angry. Aggressive. Like I was the one who messed up. I said no. Instead, I suggested we meet on Sunday at a park nearby so she could see him. She hung up on me. The whole conversation rattled me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. So I made the decision. I went to the clerk's office and filed the divorce papers that same day. A coworker let me know the documents were now ready to be served, and they'd be delivered right to Lila, at work. Then I picked up the phone and called a deputy. I called someone I knew, a deputy, and asked him to serve the divorce papers to Lila at her job. He agreed without hesitation and said he'd take care of it the next day. That same day, Lila went back to work like nothing had happened. She spent the whole shift chatting with her janitor boy toy. They didn't get to meet up after work, though. He told her he had plans with one of his kids. Lila, under the impression that he was divorced and had 3 children, went to her parents' house after her shift ended. Later that night, she called me 3 times. I didn't answer. Each time I saw her name on the screen, I just let it ring. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Around noon the next day, Mr. Douglas, our family lawyer, walked into the nurse's station at the hospital and asked for Lila by name. When she stepped forward, he looked her dead in the eye and announced in a loud, clear voice, "Mrs. Lila, you are being served with divorce papers for infidelity." She collapsed. Right there on the floor. Her supervisor, Alex, rushed over and helped her into a chair, but Lila was visibly shaken, completely wrecked by the public humiliation. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock. The realization hit her hard. I wasn't going to forgive her. And everyone around her now knew exactly what she had done. It took a while for her to calm down. She was still reeling when she got called into the hospital administrator's office toward the end of her shift. And just like that, bam! The door slammed shut, and she was fired. Apparently, someone had reported her for inappropriate behavior. Turns out, someone had seen her and the janitor getting cozy in the hospital parking lot. Had the rumors about her affair spreading like wildfire, and the hospital wasn't going to risk the scandal. They told her not to come back. Not ever. Her last paycheck would be mailed. The janitor? He didn't last much longer. He was fired and escorted off the premises about an hour before Lila got the boot. By the time she walked out, everyone in that hospital knew what had happened. She drove straight to her parents' house and gave them some watered-down version of the story, just that we'd separated. No real details, of course. Meanwhile, I sat at home, eating dinner with my son, soaking in the rare peace of a quiet evening. For the first time in weeks, the house felt calm. Then came a knock at the door. I opened it to find a pregnant woman, clearly exhausted and struggling to stand. She asked if Lila was home. I told her no, she didn't live here anymore. When I confirmed I was Lila's husband, she let out a long breath. She was the janitor's wife. And she was just as horrified as I'd been. She told me she'd heard about what happened at the hospital, and wanted to speak with Lila face to face. I gave her directions to Lila's parents' house. Before she left, she thanked me and even complimented me on how well I was handling fatherhood. "Your son's lucky to have you," she said. As she walked back to her car, I sat back down at the table with Max. There was so much pain in my chest, betrayal, sadness, confusion, but I knew I had to keep it together. For him. What I learned next shook me all over again. Lila wasn't just part of some random affair. She'd been caught up in a disgusting little game, some sort of challenge cooked up by the janitor and his buddies. Their goal? To sleep with as many married women as they could in 90 days. Lila was the 3rd woman on his list. And get this, he slept with a 4th one on the same night he claimed to be with one of his kids. It's sick. The house he took her to. Just a rental. A place where he brought all the women he was cheating with. When his wife found out, she confronted him. He showed up drunk, sobbing, begging for forgiveness. Then she went to find Lila. She told her everything, the truth about her husband, the game, the other women. She even told her how she'd seen me taking care of Max, while Lila was too busy playing house with a predator. Lila broke down. She collapsed into sobs, unable to speak. When the janitor's wife walked away, Lila just sat there in the driveway, catatonic. My in-laws saw the car leave and came outside to check on her. She wasn't making sense, babbling incoherently. They brought her inside, debating whether to take her to the ER. My father-in-law, who, despite everything, is a good man, was heartbroken. He couldn't wrap his head around the fact that his daughter had cheated on her husband. My mother-in-law, though, as usual, she found a way to blame me for all of it. I couldn't stand my mother-in-law. That woman always found a way to blame me for everything, and honestly, I felt a huge sense of relief knowing I'd never have to deal with her again. Yeah, the whole situation sucked. It was painful and infuriating, but deep down, I was also relieved to finally see things clearly, to know the truth. That truth, as hard as it was to swallow, marked the beginning of my healing. Later that day, Lila's dad gave me a call. He said she still wasn't responding to anyone, barely taking care of herself. He sounded genuinely worried and, get this, even had the nerve to suggest I come see her. Seriously? After everything she put me through? After the cheating, the betrayal, the lies? I told him flat out, no. I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. Lila made this mess. Now she had to lie in it. I told him he should get her the help she needed, and once she got her act together, I'd be open to her seeing our son. But until then, my priority had to be Max, not Lila's downward spiral. I needed to protect my son from the chaos, not drag him through it. While I was at work a few days later, Lila called me asking if she could see Max. I didn't agree right away. First, I asked how she was doing, whether she was stable enough to be around him without causing any emotional upheaval. She told me she was fine. Still, I wasn't about to take her word for it. So I agreed to meet her, but only if her father came along, and I made sure my mom was there too. No way was I going to see Lila alone after everything. We met at the park that Saturday at 9 a.m. She looked rough. She'd lost a lot of weight, no makeup, hair barely brushed. And she smelled like plain ivory soap, nothing like the woman I once knew. Later, I found out her mom had to bathe and dress her because she wasn't functioning well enough to do it herself. That hit me hard. We kept the visit to 2 hours. Then we agreed to do it again the next weekend, gradually extending the visits to 4 hours and including Sundays. It went on like that for 3 weeks. Each time, she seemed a little more composed. But I wasn't convinced she was ready to be alone with Max, and there was no way I was letting her take him overnight. Then her mom decided she'd had enough of this arrangement. She went and hired a lawyer to sue me for full custody. Now, I hadn't even filed the divorce papers yet because, legally, I could wait up to 6 months. I had no problem co-parenting down the road. I'd even told Lila's dad I was willing to split custody 50-50 once she was stable. But her mom? She wasn't having it. She wanted total control. That pissed me off. So I fought back. I filed for full custody myself, on the grounds of Lila's ongoing mental health issues. The courtroom was ice cold, but my chest felt like it was on fire. I sat on one side of the room, heart pounding. Across from me was Lila, sitting beside her lawyer, looking calm, too calm. A year ago, we'd been a happy family. Or at least I thought we were. Now here we were, fighting over custody of our son. Her lawyer stood first, painting Lila as a loving mother who'd been unfairly shut out of her son's life. She claimed Lila had worked hard on her mental health and deserved full custody. Then my lawyer got up. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He told the judge that I had serious concerns about Lila's stability. He presented documents, timelines, even statements to show that she wasn't ready for full-time parenting. He asked the court to give me full custody. The judge listened carefully, then called a recess to think it over. I walked out of the courtroom with my head spinning, heart heavy. I leaned against the wall, trying to get a grip on myself. That's when Lila's dad came over. He'd been one of the only people from her side who still treated me with respect through all of this. And in that moment, just seeing him there, it helped. I was genuinely thankful for Lila's dad in that moment. He pulled me aside, clearly concerned about everything that was going on. He told me Lila had been making progress, really sticking to therapy and taking her medication as prescribed. He said she seemed serious about getting better. I admitted to him that I was torn. I wanted what was best for our son, no question about it. But after everything that had happened, I couldn't just pretend I trusted Lila again. Not yet. He got it. He understood where I was coming from. But he also suggested something I hadn't expected, working out a joint custody arrangement. He believed our son deserved to have both parents in his life, and that hit me. After sitting with it for a moment, I nodded. He was right. If Lila could stay on the right path, maybe we could make that work. We headed back into the courtroom, and the judge made the decision, joint custody, with the condition that Lila continue with her mental health treatment and stick to all court-ordered guidelines. As we walked out of the courthouse, a strange calm came over me. It wasn't joy exactly, but it felt like the weight was starting to lift. I looked up at the sky and silently prayed that things might finally start getting better. A few days later, Lila showed up at my front door. She wanted to reconcile. She actually stood there and told me she thought we should get back together. Move back in. Try again. She gave me some long-winded explanation, trying to justify everything she'd done, trying to convince me that we could fix what she broke. I just stared at her, stunned. Anger started boiling inside me. How dare she? After all the pain, the betrayal, the public humiliation, this is what she comes back with. I didn't say a word. I just shut the door in her face. And the second I turned around, there was Amber. Yeah. That's her name, Amber. And she's everything Lila never was. We met not long ago, and it felt like something out of a movie. Sparks, chemistry, connection, like fireworks on the 4th of July. She saw it all go down at the door and didn't say a word at first. Just pulled me into a hug. I'll never forget that moment. She held me close while I unloaded all the frustration I'd been carrying. She listened, supported me, and reminded me I deserved better. That I was better. And I believed her. Amber became my anchor. My safe place. My reminder that love didn't have to be twisted or painful. With her, things were light. Easy. Honest. In the days that followed, my world started shifting in the best way. We spent more time together, made new memories, went on many adventures. With every smile and laugh, I felt like pieces of me were coming back together. The pain Lila caused? It started to fade. Slowly, but surely. Lila kept trying to reach out, of course. A few texts here, a voicemail there. But I was done. That chapter was closed, locked, and buried. She was part of my past. And Amber? She was my future. I wasn't wasting another second looking back. Life's too damn short to stay stuck in old wounds. I was moving forward, with a woman who actually saw me, supported me, and made me believe in happiness again. With Amber by my side, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. Cheers to new beginnings.